Hey everyone, and welcome back to Above the Tree Line, where we answer your questions about Christianity, culture, what else? Faith,
You
God,
name it. Anything
church.
goes.
Yes.
All the above.
So there has been.
Hi, Lauren.
Oh yeah, you're Will Davis
I'm
Jr.
Will and you're Lauren.
I'm just getting ready to dive
We're
right
ready to
into
go
it.
on this one, yeah.
We're from Austin Christian Fellowship here in the beautiful city of Austin, Texas, having this conversation.
Glad to see y'all.
We received a question about Pride Month. We normally don't do like time-sensitive topics, but we are approaching June, and June is National Pride Month for the United States of America, and so
Worldwide.
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 So a lot of Christians are they're reacting to the month in different ways. Some of them are protesting, some are very angry about it, some are very welcoming of it. And I think people just want to know like what's the Christian response to Pride Month? Like how should Christians interact with this? I mean, they're calling it like a holiday, but we don't call it that because it's not a holy day, according to the Bible. But before we get into that, let's first dive into what is Pride Month and where did it come from?
Pride Month is the now month-long celebration and commemoration of LGBTQ pride. That's what the definition says online. It's a celebration and commemoration of that, of the pride that the people have in their lifestyle. And it goes back to June 28th, 1969, riots followed the cleansing out attack of the New York police on a bar called the Stonewall.
The Stonewall.
Yeah, in New York City. That was a frequent hangout for people of LGBT lifestyle. It was also owned by the mafia. And so there may have been some shady stuff going on there, but it kept happening and they felt targeted. And so they began to protest, and it was originally like it became a celebration. We're pushing back against this discrimination against people of this sexual orientation, and it grew into a national and then international movement. And so that's why it's in June, is because it goes back to June 29th, 1969 in New York City.
And discrimination is not okay.
No, it's not. And if the police, I don't know the story of what the police were going after the mafia, but they felt picked on. I can tell you that. So now it is to the degree, as you know, that it's become a massive marketing thing.
Yes,
It's become
it's a major
massive,
commercial.
It's a major commercial thing. There's money involved. Many U.S. embassies will fly pride flags all over the world. I talked about a year or two ago the embassy near the Roman Vatican in Rome flew a pride flag in front of the embassy, the Roman compound there. What am I trying to say? The Holy City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these were, when you say pride flags, you're talking about the rainbow flag.
Rainbow flags.
Okay, because there's a number of different variations.
They'll issue statements saying we are supporting and celebrating this month with our friends, which is great. They can do that. So it's a huge, huge thing. And I
now
get questions.
companies want to make money off of it.
Yeah. And
everywhere.
They can. I get questions all the time about it from Christ followers. The fun part of this, Lauren, is I just left an hour ago, spending an hour with a friend of mine who's an openly gay woman here in the city, and she's someone who I go to see regularly for a service, and she's delightful. And I interviewed her about this. I said, I'm going to be talking about it. What do you think? So I can spill that in as
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, she's a dear friend of mine. I love her dearly.
Yeah.
I've called her on many occasions when I'm in trouble and need help, and we love each other, but we are on such opposite extremes of this thing. That's what makes it fun.
Well, I mean, and that's what's interesting
what makes
because,
it fun.
like, I also have very dear gay friends, and they know where I stand, and I know where they stand. But neither one of us is offended by the other person.
It spices it up.
Yeah, we don't have to be offended. Like, oh, we don't vote the same. We don't agree on this. That's fine, whatever. But you're still a human being. You're still made in
love
God's
her.
image.
Yeah.
Christ still died for you, and I enjoy spending time around you. But before we go any deeper, I want to talk about the word pride, because pride in this arena, we are being proud. We are beating our chest. Pride, though, in the Bible, pride precedes the fall of man. Pride is a wicked sin talked about over and over again, and never are we given a permission to be proud in that sense.
So if you're, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Lauren. The question is, how do Christians respond? I think Christians should flee from anything that's associated with, hey, look at us. Here we are.
Yeah. I mean, even like Christian pride.
Well,
it's not something I would walk around.
Humans, that's an oxymoron. Christian pride. humans at their best are filthy rags before God. On our best behavior, on our best day, when the image of God is still shining through us, we are broken, desperately needy humans, and there's no place other than let he who boasts boast in the Lord. There's no place in Scripture where, hey, look at us, we're going to toot our horn, is acceptable to God.
Well, Jesus was the opposite of that. He was humble.
Yes. So number one, I think Christians should avoid Pride Month because of the fact that it's pride.
Right.
It could be Pride Month over anything. We don't have a right to boast before God on anything.
Right.
If you mix it to I'm going to say this gently, if you add it to a behavior that is just, at least, let's say, questionable
in the Bible,
in Scripture, which is not questionable, it's condemned, but I'll be friendly, now we're on thin ice. They have a right to do it. But from the Christian standpoint, you're going to have a hard time finding solid ground here to jump into supporting this from a biblical standpoint.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way because they do have the right
They have
in
total right to.
America.
Yeah.
They totally have. We have rights to do a lot of
100%.
things that
We have a different code
as
Christians. And so people will say, well, I'm going to do it as an act of compassion. I'm going to do it to build bridges. And I always want to say, you're never going to out-compassion God.
Right.
He's more compassionate to your friends and their needs than you are. And you're never going to build a better bridge than the cross of Jesus, which was the statement about what sin really is. So the Pride Month, to me, as a Christian, is problematic because I think it endorses a behavior that is not biblical. And I think it's also, the whole pride thing is real scandalous and kind of crazy. Like, we don't beat our chest before God.
You just said you'll never out-compassion God. Somebody once told me recently, because I'm really big on justice, and they were like, just remember, you're still not as just as God.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, oh,
Or as loving
you're
as God.
right.
You don't love people as much as God does.
Right. But so there's a reason. So let's take the traditional kind of Christian stance on Pride Month. So Christians, there's a lot of scripture, like you said, in the Bible about this. Therefore, Romans 1:24, therefore God gave them over to the sinful desires of their hearts, to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged truth about God for a lie. They worship and serve created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even women exchanged their natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, men abandoned their natural relationships with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. So, I mean, what Paul is saying in Romans is very clear. People will argue, though, today, if this is still irrelevant, if that was a cultural thing. Like, in that culture, that behavior was not acceptable. We have evolved since then, and that's not applicable
Yeah, I've
anymore.
heard that. I've also heard the standpoint of he wasn't talking about monogamy.
Or polygamy.
He was talking about sex with anybody of same sex orientation. But if you're faithful to one spouse in same sex, he wasn't saying that. And I think you can pretty much, without much effort, shoot that down based on culture and biblical interpretation and what's going on in Rome. The Bible, you could, let's take Romans out. There are 15,000 other passages that say the same thing, Old and New Testament. You can't torture the Scripture enough to make it support same-sex relationships. You just can't. You deal with this passage, there's 42 more you got to deal with.
Right.
And so, my friend and I were just talking. We're both sinful. She says we're both trapped in these bodies that are filled with sin. And I said we are. And some symptoms are different from others. But today, if you call homosexuality a sin, it's called hate. And it's not hate. It's just it's a behavior that God doesn't endorse. But so is gossip.
Yeah. There's a lot of
So
behaviors that I have that
I
God
know.
does not endorse. I'm not offended by you saying that those are sin. I think where the difference comes in is the behaviors that I feel like God doesn't endorse about me kind of feel inherently kind of evil and mean, whereas the gay community is saying, I'm not doing anything to anyone. I just want to love who I want to love.
And it's also so tightly connected to their identity.
Right.
My friend, this is who she is.
Yeah.
It's not a behavior for her. It's her identity. And so for me to say that's an ungodly behavior that's part of your identity is so insulting to her.
Right.
Because it's not just a behavior for her, it's how she identifies as a person, as a human. And that's why it's so messy, because it really does go after the core of what a person is. So we start then talking about the image of God. And like God created them male and female. He created them in the image of God. God defined his image as either male or female. And then he defined the ability to procreate as husband and wife. You can't procreate any other way. I mean, today people say men can breastfeed and men can have babies, and that's stupid. Let me be very clear. We're going to get so flagged on Facebook for this.
You are.
It is, men cannot have babies and men cannot breastfeed, and it's insulting to women to say that they can. Period.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, that's
So
a
the point
whole
is,
other
identity.
Yeah.
It goes to, so we have to come back with, well, the image of God says you're this. And so what I told my friend a minute ago was, this may not be God's best for you, but it doesn't define you either way.
It doesn't.
It does. It's not.
Because do you believe, because I know certain Christians feel this way, do you believe that you can be a gay Christian?
100%.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there will be.
100%. I'm going to get pushed back on that too.
Yeah, you will.
Oh, absolutely.
So some of the other questions.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
I think the more I get closer to Jesus, the more he'll convict me of my sin. And I might end up being celibate, but I really might never lose the attraction to men.
Right.
But I might
You may
decide,
not.
it's not going to honor Christ. Okay, I'm going to pull back and not act on this. But I may never lose that attraction. It doesn't mean I don't love Jesus.
Yeah.
It's 100% you can be a Christian and be gay.
Well, in what kind of so that we have I feel like the gay movement has been around for a while, but recently we've seen an uptick in people who identify as transgender, and that's not really talked about in the Bible, is it? Transgenderism?
The gender is. The only thing that's talked about in Scripture is the inappropriateness they viewed in the culture of Israel of men dressing as women and women dressing as men, and not being who you were, true to your identity, even in your dress, which again was a rejection of some of the cultures around them, where anything went, anything can go. But gender and sexuality are clearly talked about in the first 3 chapters of the Bible. Again, part of the creative act was male and female, and then procreation. And you can't have humanity without those two things.
Yeah.
Think about it. We can't have humanity without male and female and procreation. And you have to have male and female to procreate.
Right.
So the whole human existence is based
Yeah.
on gender and sexuality staying in their lanes.
Yeah.
Staying in their lanes. If you get them out of their lanes, you're going to.
But this one's really hard because I have transgender friends, and even my daughter has some transgender friends in elementary school that truly believe, either I was born a man with male, but
body.
I'm a woman, and they say a lot. They want to live their truth. I have such compassion for these people because I cannot imagine how conflicting that would be to have to almost change everything about you, including your biology, to truly live as who you believe God designed you to be. My issue with that is that I don't believe that God makes mistakes, but they will come back and say, well, then why did God allow people to be born with Down syndrome and all these disabilities?
It's a Genesis 3. It's all Genesis 3.
Yeah.
And let me explain that for our audience. There's a world that's perfect in Genesis 1 and 2. Humans enter the equation and sin, and everything God created, God. And so we are born with predispositions. We are born with predisposed behaviors, etc. Those are a result of Genesis 3.
Right.
They're not the way God made things. It's the result of our rebellion. And Jesus died to undo those things. So there's not going to be Down syndrome in heaven. There's not going to be Parkinson's in heaven. There's not going to be same-sex attraction in heaven. There's not going to be confusion. God is never the author of confusion. So if I'm confused about my gender identity, that's not a God thing. It may be a Genesis. I may have been born that way, yes, but it doesn't mean it's right. That's the difference. Is I was born this way. Well, we were all born away, and Jesus died to redeem all of that. That's so offensive today. I acknowledge that. But it's the gospel truth in that we're all born with our stuff. Jesus died to free us from our stuff. And that includes the confusion that comes around gender and orientation, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that doesn't sound loving today, but that's our culture.
Well, I mean, but on the flip side, it's kind of a sigh of relief because you're saying all these inherently terrible things about myself, and there are plenty. Jesus died to redeem those. I'm like, oh, thank God, because I don't necessarily like those things about myself. So when it comes to Pride Month specifically, the Christians who want to show love to their neighbor, should they engage in celebrating or supporting Pride Month in an effort to build a bridge?
I think that the code to honor the holiness of God is higher. I think we're supposed to honor God first and be salt and light. And if I cease to be salt and light, then I'm not honoring God, and I'm not really representing Christ well. So I can honor my friend who I just left, and I do honor her multiple ways without participating in Pride Month with her. Now, she agreed with this. I think atheists are very similar in one way to people of same-sex orientation or LGBT community. Most atheists are humble, quiet, trying to figure it out, not particularly thrilled at the fact that they have a theology that doesn't include God. They're really trying to work it out, but they're not militant and they're not activists. There's a small segment of atheists that are activists that give all the rest of atheists a bad name.
I would say the same thing for Christians.
Same thing true for Christians. Same thing true for the gay community. Most of them are trying to figure it out. They're not protesting. They're not marching. They're really trying to figure it out. They wish they had answers they don't have, but they're not trying to convert anybody. And there's a militant bunch that's banging on doors and threatening corporations. If you don't put a rainbow on your window, we're going to sue you. And my friend said, they don't represent me. And I think that's true with the atheists as well.
Yeah.
And I think the Christians have the same thing like you said. So have them over to dinner. Become friends with them. Love them. Treat them like human beings. But marching with them, if they march, doesn't...
It's not God
now
honoring.
you're making their cause higher than holiness, which is your code. So I say don't participate.
So polite non-participation.
Love them.
Yeah.
Invite them to your table.
Yeah.
But the marching piece to build bridges is now you're not being salt anymore.
Right.
You're endorsing.
So this was a really big issue last year that we're going to reopen. A major retail store offended a great portion of its shoppers who decided to no longer shop at that particular establishment because of the way they were recognizing, celebrating gay pride, specifically pertaining to children. I know you remember this in the news and everything. So is it right for people to say, like, I'm no longer going to shop there because I disagree with what you're doing? Or
Yeah, I'm not the most objective person on this one, Lauren. I was at, I'll just name the store. I was at the Container Store a couple of years ago in June, and they had an Organized with Pride sign on their window, the rainbow. And I thought, that's the stupidest. All they're doing is covering their rear ends. No, they don't care about the gay community. They're covering their butts. They did as little as they could to say they did it. Or they never just said, Organized with Pride. What does that even mean? They put a rainbow and the word pride on their window, and they got off. Now, I really want to go and say, I'm insulted for the gay community that's how cheap you are, that's what you're going to do to say you believe in them. That's so just covering our rear ends and saying we're making this a deal, and they're make money off it too, by the way. So I personally will not participate this month with businesses that are selling products because I don't think they care about the gay community. I think it's political for them, and it may be commercial for them. I don't think they really care with compassion about that person who's trying to figure it out. It's about politics. Some have a political alignment to promote something. Most of them are just like, oh, it's a way to make some money and stay out of the headlines. We're going to do it.
yeah.
And Target has backed off this year, and now Walmart's going all in on it.
Really?
Yes, Walmart's the target of this year. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens because Walmart's all in on everything Target was doing last year. Target pulled back
Yeah.
a little bit this year.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting to see what happens. I won't go into Walmart for a month. I haven't been in Target in a year just because I don't think they care. I think it's about money for them. And to me, that's the ultimate insult to the gay community. It's like, we're going to make money off your backs.
Off of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the letters are going to come in on this one, aren't they?
They are. It's hard though because like there's so many organizations that we shop at. Like I'm a fan of organizations and businesses that do not represent Christian beliefs at all. But there's like nostalgia and magic there. And a lot of people say, why do you give your money to this organization who so believes what you don't believe? But I'm like, how many organizations outside of the church actually believe what I believe? Like you have to shop somewhere. And sometimes that store is just more convenient because it's right there.
And I gave you my opinion.
Yeah.
This is what Will's doing. I'm not going to tell somebody not to shop at Target because that's between them and God. And that may be what they can afford, and that's great.
Target's expensive.
Target.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
little
not gonna. I'm
expensive.
not gonna. I would never tell somebody not to do that. For me, I just can't do it because I want to be salt and light, and I don't want to embrace this side of this that's like made it about money and about if you don't do it, then you're not loving. I think that's a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
So I don't want to embrace that. I'm not gonna play ball with that.
Because you can be extremely loving of the gay community
Yeah.
and still not agree with their
Yeah,
definition
not
of
disagreeing
marriage.
is not loving.
Right.
If I disagree with you today, it's hate, and that's not true.
Right.
It's just
Because everybody's offended.
everybody's offended.
Everybody's offended. But at the end of the day, be salt and light. Love your neighbor, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of gender.
Be salt and light, though. You got to think about it. Be a purifying, preserving, flavor-adding degree in culture. That's what salt means. Light sticks out in darkness. It doesn't get dark with darkness to build bridges. So to be salt and light is we're different. We're different. And if we stop being different, we stop being salt and light.
Okay. Well, we've
tired.
actually run out of time now, but
Thank the Lord.
Very relevant topic. A lot of people are asking about this, so it is something that we need to address.
Please forgive us if we've offended you. We're not trying.
We
can't
offend.
talk about this without being offended. We'll get flagged for it, I'm sure. We can't talk about this and not be offensive because of the culture. We're not trying to judge anybody.
Yeah. Not judging, not hating.
But it's if you're going to mark the code of Christianity, then we have to mark that code first, not second. You got to figure that out. If you're going to be a Christian, that code gets marked first, and that puts some limits on what we can do after that. And that's what Christianity is.
Yeah. We have to act according to the Bible. That is our law, not
That's our law.
That's the law
That's our
above
code.
the
That's our
American law. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking about this with me. I
need a nap.
appreciate it. Yeah. That's normal at your age, though, Larry,
Thank
right?
you.
You take
Nice.
naps all the time.
See, I'm a protected
there
class.
You go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for bringing up this sensitive topic. If you want to ask any other questions regarding this or anything else, you can do so at acfellowship.org/podcast. And we will look forward to seeing you guys next time.